Did you forget about Knox Unplugged today? Would you turn that
I
fan off?
didn't. I did not. No.
Doggone you. I wanted you to forget too. I totally forgot. I was so happy this morning. I was like, man, I don't have nothing to do this morning, so I can. What happened to Jason? There he goes. He disappeared for a second.
Una momento. I don't know.
And so I was like, I can relax. And then my stupid calendar kicked on. It was like, guess what you're forgetting today? I was like, oh. And I was gonna say, okay, well, shoot, I've blown it. Let me just. And then I remembered that we have an audience that will come find us and hang us by our
Yeah,
toes.
they'll hunt us down.
They will hunt us down. And now I got to talk about some of them real quick because somebody hit me up and was like, hey, this is what it's like. And they put a little meme up of some guy being like super bored waiting. This is what it's like waiting for the next Knox Unplugged. And I'm like, wait a second, we're not behind. And he didn't know that we had uploaded one. And,
okay.
And so I sent him a link. I was like, don't be blaming us. When you up here not looking well. So, I was thinking about so last time we talked about Transformers, and I think we had all the spoilers in there. But we didn't talk about? And
what?
my son tells me, he's like, Dad, you know what you and Mr. Farley need to do? You guys need to do movie reviews. I was like, well, we kind of do movie reviews. He's like, no, not with all that other stuff. He's like, just straight up movie reviews. Just straight up and down. It's all about the movie. I'm like, everybody already does that. Like, it's kind of like, okay, whatever. But we didn't talk about Miles Morales.
We didn't. I feel like I need to watch it again, though. Like my first time through, I felt like I was so overwhelmed by how beautiful everything was.
Okay.
That I was like, I don't know. I need another take at this just to get the. It was because like there was so much awe as I was watching it at the animation that there were times when I was like, oh my gosh, this whole thing is incredible. And I know that like the scene where she's talking with her dad. And
yes. Gwen. Which by the way, whose movie is this? Let's just be honest. Whose movie? Is this Gwen's movie or is this Miles' movie? I'm really confused.
I think Gwen was probably more the main character. But you're right. Are we going to spoil it is it too soon to spoil this one?
Too late. We've already spoiled it.
Because it was part 2 in a trilogy. You have a ton of setup that you don't know where it's going yet. And so they did a lot to set up Gwen's story for the final, for the third part of the trilogy.
Which makes me think it's her. Well, and they ended, the chiasm was they started with her and they ended with her.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think you were in her world more than in Miles's world.
Yep.
Miles was in her world, I guess you'd say, for this one. But like, because the world she lives in is a watercolor, and as her world falls apart, it sort of melts behind her. Like that whole scene, the whole time I was like, this is gorgeous, and I can barely pay attention to the dialogue. It's so beautiful. I feel like I need another time through it before.
So let me pose to you the question that my son posed to me.
Okay.
And so my son, he's comic book, he's into it. Like he gets it. It's amazing raising your kids with a classical education, how much they pick up on story and brand and characters, not just in TV shows, but in life. Right. So immediately they're like, oh, he's like so-and-so. So then he starts judging how he's going to engage and act with something before he ever gets to it, because he knows that this character enjoys or dislikes this thing this particular way. Right. And so they kind of pull like this. I know how my friend's going to engage this. or I know how my nemesis is going to engage this. And so they're kind of ready for it. But all through story brand. But watching, he's like, Dad, why is it that everybody is equating Miles Morales, Lost in the Spider-Verse to Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah.
He's like, because you said that movie was horrible, right? And yet everybody says that these two things are pieces of work. And he's like, I know Miles Morales, at least at this point, he's like, it doesn't seem like they've gone off the ledge.
No, definitely they haven't gone off the ledge. I think it's because you've got both of them are multiverse stories. Both of them are gorgeous, right? Because that's the thing, Everything Everywhere All at Once. What you can't deny is that it's visually beautiful, stunning. That the way that they set it up was so that each world really has its own aesthetic. And but what they did was try to use that to justify, so they tried to use the beauty to justify that any sort of setup or any sort of relationship is equivalent to any other relationship, so long as it feels the same, right? So that the feeling between two people is the constant throughout the universe. And this is something that Chesterton talks about in the Ethics of Elfland, in Orthodoxy, where he says that you can change the leaves from green to gold on an apple tree in fairyland, but you can't make stealing right. You can't make murder right. Right? There are certain things that would make the universe nonsensical, or the universe a bad place. And then other things that you can change and are up for grabs, that are, and what the constant in the Spider-Verse is the father-child relationship. The constant, at what they tried to make the constant throughout the multiverse in Everything Everywhere All at Once, is the way two people feel about each other. So you can have homosexual relationships, lesbian relationships, you can have that whatever you would call, whatever feels like love between two people, that's what's the constant. And they pushed it so hard that they, even if you've seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, they get to that point with the hot dog finger place where they're playing piano with their toes, and they try to make it into, they try to make you feel the love story the same way that you do between just the husband and wife, in the in the kind of the central characters love stories. And it doesn't work that way, right? There are certain things that it doesn't matter where you are, that that you say, no, you can't pull that wool over my eyes. Although a lot of people obviously have had that wool pulled over their eyes, right? But it's because I think Everything Everywhere All at Once, what it proves is that, culturally speaking, we have already Christians have already fallen into that ditch, because we don't have a good answer when two people come up and they say, well, but we feel this, our love feels the same way your love feels. How can it, what makes it different? And we go, well, it's
feelings don't matter.
Feelings don't matter.
Are irrelevant.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you say facts don't care about your feelings. You say, well, that's actually not a particularly good argument when it comes to a love story, right? And that, this is why I don't, the Edward Spencer, I think, is so important. Like we talked about last week, Edward Spencer is the inventor of of the modern love story. He takes all of the what you would think of as love, all of the medieval allegorical love of, you know, courtly love, all of those traditions, and says, what if it was applied to a husband and wife within a covenant? Right? Which it took a while to get there, but that's the scriptural, that's Song of Solomon, right? Is the love of a wife and a husband in the context of a covenant, that's deep and passionate and full of feelings, that's a safe place for that fire to be lit. That's the fireplace where you want the fire burning really, really hot. Whereas if you get a hot fire, it's not necessarily a blessing if the hot fire is outside the fireplace, right? A hot fire is a curse if the hot fire is on the walls.
Right. Yeah. Fire
right.
is not the problem. It's where it's placed at.
Yes, where it's placed at, right? And you see that with everything everywhere all at once, that you don't have covenant protections around the love. You don't have the covenant promises that go with the love. You don't have the societal help to uphold the covenant protections, because it's not a public relationship. All of the good things that take that love and make it possible for it to be a long-term blessing to the individuals, to society, to the human race, in terms of, children being born and raised and, sent off into the world. All of those things are separated from the feeling, and the feeling is taken out of the protections of the fireplace, and it's just sort of tossed around willy-nilly. And sometimes that means it just burns out quick, and sometimes that means it just burns the whole house down. But the protections of purposefully reflecting the family of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, or the triune community, and the covenantal nature of God's life, purposefully reflecting that with our relationships, is a protection to keep that love growing. And because you're married for very long, and you realize, oh my gosh, I married somebody who's in constant flux. She's changing all the time, right? The Aaron that I spent, that I drank a cup of coffee with this morning, versus the Aaron that I asked to marry me, are very, very different. But
right.
Right. So you've got the constant flux and change. What is it that that protects that? It can't be my own feelings, because my feelings are something that are in flux and changing. And that's not something that I can put faith in, or that Erin can put faith in, right? She can't fully give herself to my feelings, because she knows how often they change. I mean, last night I went through a moment where I just was like, what's it really all worth? Spent about 30 minutes despairing, because I'm doing the math as you get, yeah, well, no, I was just doing the math as you get close to the end of the month. I'm like, it's got this, you're doing the math and you're like, oh, what's it all for? Here I am, this is running out again, that sort of thing. And if my wife has to depend upon my feelings in order to be able to give herself fully to this relationship, then that's a tough thing to trust. But that's not what God does with us, right? God gives us promises, covenant vows. He gives us covenant signs and seals and covenant renewals, right? And he says, this, you can trust the promise. Now, God doesn't fluctuate the way we do, but we can imitate him by giving that same sort of we can make promises. We, and it's still a risk. Obviously, all relationships are a risk. And, it doesn't matter. This is something that I think some people, when they have teenagers, they're spending their time trying to figure out how to limit the risk of their kids' relationships. And I guess you can do some of that, but it's always a risk, right? Yeah. But what we can do is set up small societies, because society at large doesn't offer the protections and the supports that we need for covenant faithfulness. But we can set up small societies, our families, our churches, our friendships, and say, we're going to reflect the triune nature of covenant love and support one another in doing it, right? Uphold one another. And Everything Everywhere All at Once is acid to that kind of life. It's acid to the life that says, because it's existentialist, right? So we've talked about existentialism some.
Yeah, a little bit.
But existentialism is the view that everything is only in this particular shape right now because of the coercive force of historical forces of some sort, right? So whether it's economic forces, physical forces, psychological forces, whatever it is, things are in this current shape not because there's any meaning attached to this shape of things, but because of coercive external forces. Because that's true, there is no ultimate meaning. So if we're going to find meaning in our life, we have to wrestle the meaning of our individual lives. We have to wrestle it out of the meaninglessness. And we do that either through some sort of decision to make something meaningful, to find something that's meaningful to us, even though it's not ultimately meaningful, and grab onto it. Right? But what and Everything Everywhere All at Once is existentialist philosophy put into a multiverse story. So everybody's trying to wrestle meaning out of the relationships, out of their feelings, really, the feeling of meaning out of their relationships. And it just ultimately doesn't work.
So
it turns each person into a vampire where they're sucking the life out of the things around them and emptying the things around them.
Which makes sense why we enjoy vampire movies now too.
Where vampires as the good guy used to be the other way.
It used to be the other way around.
Yeah, I love Blade. Let's go kill some vampires.
I'm with that. I'm with that. I love Blade too. I'm looking forward to the new one whenever that does decide to. It should be Wesley Snipes still. That's all I'm saying. He's paid his dues. Wesley is the only Blade I recognize. But so then
we're gonna have to start a Not My Blade campaign.
Unless the movie's good, then like, okay, he gets to hold the mantle for a little bit. I got a couple questions. Why is it though that people the conflating of both? So I see why people identify with Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's the world, since they're all acting like that, that's the world that they're striving to live in. Right. Or they're trying to make, they're all in that same fight. So they can identify with somebody else because they're in that same fight. So it's attractive to them, that story. Across the Spider-Verse, at least at this point in the story, is complete opposition to that.
Right.
So then why is it that they find both of these like,
I think some of it's just the externals, right? So you're bouncing through universes,
right,
that each have a different artistic setup. So I think that's some of it.
They're using the same sort of format in order to tell the story, and so it seems familiar.
Right. And multiverse stories, multiverse science fiction, it's a particular kind of fairy tale that I think is up for grabs. It can be used well, it can be used poorly.
Yeah.
what they've done is they have made it clear that it's not random. So it's more of, you've got different creators, sub creators for each universe, right? You don't have the random nature of things in Everything Everywhere All at Once is, I think, the root problem, right? They're trying to show what does it look like for they're using the multiverse as an excuse to treat the world like it has no creator, right? That's a self-created world. You don't have that at all in um you
Across the
have
Spider-Verse.
different, across the Spider-Verse. You basically have a different artist at the creation level of each world, and you had that in the first one, right? So you have, like, Spider Pig shows up, and it's obviously a Looney Tunes world.
Right,
You've got
right.
Spider Noir, right? And it, which is what's the guy that invented the noir novel, really great storyteller. He but so you've got these different creators that are obviously
Functioning,
there
yeah.
functioning. So because of that, and then because the father child relationship is a is a biologically and covenantally rooted relationship, right? That um that everybody's wrestling with. Interestingly enough, I mean, I think what's the Spider-Man that you meet that's like a drunk falling apart in the first one, this one you meet him with his
Right,
child, and
right.
it has brought his sanity back, right? So
He's made more
his
human
sanity
instinct,
has been
yeah.
restored by his but by becoming a father, right? Where he had lost his father, and then he had lost, because of the relationships he'd lost along the way, he'd lost his sanity. His By becoming a father, his sanity is restored. Right? And you've got that kind of running joke where he can't he doesn't want to spend any time away from his kid, so he brings his kid on the adventures
Everywhere.
with him. And his wife is like, "Did you bring her?" He's like, "No, of course not." But
Well, when there's a
but
moment in there,
it's
he's like, hold the baby. It's life changing, right? Like, hold the baby. It'll change
right,
your life. This little thing
yeah,
is amazing. It changes everything, you know?
right. And that's completely, so rooted they've rooted people's character in something that is real and true.
Mm,
And and the reason I think it's the thing that's missing in most people's lives, right? Father hunger is so deeply present in the modern world because of the breakdown, um, because of everything that's broken down. I think it starts with the breakdown in the father relationship for most people. Because of that, because of the fatherlessness in our culture, I mean, I think it's the reason that we have all of the different. I mean, I think most of what you look around and look at and say, "Oh, here's a problem. Here's a problem." Most of it, I think, is rooted in father hunger,
mm-hmm.
and they
Mm-hmm.
have leaned in. They leaned into that really hard, um, and
Okay.
which makes it really moving.
So let me push back a little bit too, because I think Everything Everywhere All at Once is leaning into that too, right? Because when you look
But
at
they're
them,
but they're
go ahead.
always trying to solve it with a sexual relationship.
But what validates, I mean, this is maybe where they're inconsistent, but this what validates what makes the whole thing come to a head is that she tells her father off, right?
You're right.
But he blesses it ultimately, right?
Blesses her. Blesses her. Um,
The whole thing is starts with father hunger, but her
but
dad's birthday, and she's trying to do everything for him, and she's never makes him happy, and she can't do anything right, and she should be better because her father thinks so, and all this other stuff. It starts there, and
yeah,
then it ends with him standing basically
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There's definitely a parallel there, and I think that actor, I can't think of his name right now. He
That was what's
plays it
yeah.
plays it so well that relationship is actually really moving. Um, he fails his daughter, and they call it success.
Right. Right. Right.
I think that's the where he says,
James Hong, that he's been around. This is
"Yes,
Big Trouble Little China. He's been amazing.
oh, yeah,
That's
he's
what was so
so good."
disappointing about this was like, et tu, Brute?
Right.
Et tu?
Well, he's really good in the new American Born Chinese
Oh, I haven't
on
seen
Disney.
that one yet on Disney.
He's really good in that. It's really, but I think what's yeah, that's totally it. Is you're like, oh, that's so good, and then that he actually fails his daughter, and they call it success. And I think that's what's so hard is it's fundamentally lying, but
Yep.
they make the lie really beautiful. Um, because they basically say, um, if you just follow your bodily desires wherever they lead, you will find happiness. And no matter what universe you live in, no matter what the shape of the things around you is, no matter what how things have evolved to this point, if you just follow your bodily desires, you will find happiness. And that's a terrible, terrible way to live.
It's trans. Like that's exactly like they've if that's what was so weird when they got to the hot dog hand world. I was like, oh, I see what you're doing.
You're trying to make me take seriously that the shape of things makes no
It
difference.
doesn't matter what it is. So yeah, I can create myself any kind of way. And so long as that I am fulfilled in that, you should love me. And me going around trying to recreate the universe that way, there's nothing wrong with it.
Right. Nothing wrong
Right?
with trying to because it's this shape only by the application of force anyway.
Yeah.
So if I can apply some force and reshape it, it is, you should be supportive of that.
And
And if you're not, it's because you hate happiness.
there's I find a lot of Fifth Commandment breaking. So I've been really intrigued by lately about going through God's law again and finding the applications and the multitude of meanings from a law, right? And I'm realizing that if we study God's law more, God's word more, we would actually have better answers or um, see the world better. But I think we stay so much on the surface. We never go any deeper. We just all we can see is don't dishonor your parents in the fifth commandment, right? Right.
And I think it's because we don't get beyond the first use of the law, which is to convict of sin, because we don't really believe that Jesus' death on the cross takes our sin away. So we stop at the guilt, and so we never get to the point where it says, oh well, the law is also a description of life and a description of a well-run society.
Right.
Right? We don't get to that because we actually don't believe in justification by faith alone.
Yeah, we only use the law as a form of conviction, but not as a form of like, no, this is also brings life.
Mm-hmm.
Because we never actually get get through the forgiveness.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, I think most it's the same with parenting, right? When you parent, if you haven't effectively brought your own sin to the cross and left it there, then your guilt will guide your parenting instead of God's law, which is a description of life, right? Instead of God's wisdom, your guilt will make decisions on how you parent for you, right? And so, and it's the same with society. It's the same with parenting. It's the same with that when your sin is taken away, it ceases to be a fear of sin that guides us, where you try to, over and over, I see people just trying to, they know what they don't want to happen.
Right.
And so they know what they're avoiding, but they don't know, they haven't dug in and said, what life do I actually want?
Yeah.
How do I want things to be positively? They know what they don't want to happen. So you've been digging into the law, though.
No, but it's funny you turn. This is going to be a crazy conversation because it just turned in so many different ways. No, you're right, because that's my problem with people who are opposed to Christian nationalism. I do a lot of talking in opposition to Christian nationalism, and we talk about it a lot. Now, I think I want to define, like, there's two different camps. There's people who are using the word, and there's people who have no idea what nationalism really is, and there's other people who are like, I think, who are theonomists, who are like, you know what, these people don't mean nationalism, and so I'm going to come in and kind of help them understand what they're. But since this is the term currently used, we're gonna be subversive in this, right? And then there's people who I think really are nationalists, and are Christians and are using that term, and they mean nationalism for real.
Right.
But my problem is the people who are in opposition to Christian nationalists, who are or Christian nationalism traditionally, who I think I would agree with, when it comes time for them to lay forth, then what's the alternative between full-on trans and Christian nationalism proper? What is it? And they're like, I don't really know. There's just, I don't know, just faithfulness. Like watching the whole thing come to head with G3, that was a problem I had. Was like, I think G3 was making some great comments about the problem of nationalism. I think there's a valid. Now, when you start talking to the guys who claim to be Christian nationalists, and they're like, well, yeah, we're not nationalism proper, but what we're using is, we're talking about a nation run by God, civil majesties must submit to Christ. And it's like, well, that's pretty much theonomy as far as I'm concerned, right? Then there wasn't really a problem there, and there wasn't a way forward either on, like, what is then it look like for a nation in repentance? Should a nation actually come to repentance? What does that even look like? What does it look like for when you there wasn't ever this is what I love about theonomists, and at least the guys who are theonomic Christian nationalists, right? When you ask them about law, when you ask them about how a nation should run, they have answers all the way down to the most minutia of points, right? Ask other people who are in opposition to Christian nationalism. So, do you think the police should pull people over? Ask them, do you think we should have prisons?
Right.
Ask them the questions that falls out their biblical theology and find out where they land at. Because it's one thing to say, oh, hey, I just believe we should live faithful. Well, what does faithfulness look like when applied? Oh, God's law applied to the state. Okay, that's what faithfulness looks like. Hey, king, you aren't honoring God when it comes to thou shalt not steal. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And
this is where, and in those situations, you get, it's not even the difference between, so what like, if you have, let's say, somebody that says that the law taken through the death and resurrection of the cross becomes wisdom, that trains our rulers to rule wisely,
right.
And then they apply it in their situation, right? That it's not a direct one-to-one correlation. At that point, both those two positions are this close, and then the position on the other side is way over here.
Yeah.
And you realize, like, oh, they're talking something completely different from the historical norm, right? So, because I think there are some theonomists that, as I've talked to them, you think, well, you're outside the historical norm, but you're outside like this far,
right?
This direction.
Am I one of those guys? Am I like outside the historical norm?
No,
like, just that much? I can see if I would be.
Well, no, I like what, but you guys that are like, hey, let's bring back stoning, right? I want to bring back stoning.
I just want to put gunpowder behind it.
But if I was put it but people that are like, hey, if I was put in charge, and I would bring back stoning, and that would begin putting things right.
Right.
That's outside the norm because that's not historic. That's not a historic view of the use of the law for the civil magistrates. The law having no use for civil magistrates, though, is so far outside the norm that you're actually almost talking like in a different language, right? So disagreeing on what use the law has for the civil magistrates is a small difference. Saying the law has no use for civil magistrates is that's completely outside the historic norm and understanding of the scriptures, right? We the church has always gone to the civil magistrates and tried to convert them. Period. Right? We do that. We go to the civil magistrate and tell them they have a king that they need to bow down to. That I think every Christian should agree on. When you get into the details, you might say like, oh, we've got a disagreement about how the law will then apply and how directly it applies, and does it need to go through the cross first, and does it become does it transform the magistrates who then transform the law, or does it apply directly the way it does? All of those questions are secondary if the other option is it doesn't apply to the civil magistrate.
I'm going to define it like this. All those things you're talking about are differences in the type of theonomic camp. That's how I want to define it.
It was just claim the center. Yeah,
I'm claiming the center on that because we're not questioning whether or not it should. We're questioning how. Right?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And so, that's why, even though I read theonomists often and think, that's not. You're not. I don't think you're getting. I don't think you are reading the text into the situation properly. And you think so. And it happens often enough that you start thinking, well, maybe I'm not a theonomist. But then you meet people that say, oh yeah, it doesn't apply. You're like, well, no. Maybe I am a theonomist. I want to be having the conversation about how does the text apply. And I think you're right. Theonomists have been the only ones that have been having that conversation. That used to be a normal conversation within historic Protestantism, within the within pre-high medieval Roman Catholicism, right? It gets wonky in the high medieval era, but before that, you have those kinds of conversations. But now I don't know. I don't understand how you could say, well, the civil magistrate doesn't need to submit to the scriptures.
Yeah, so you were talking earlier. I think this all comes in and ties in Spencer. But when you were talking earlier about, why do we put, you said that we put our faith in our feelings. And if everybody knows that feelings are arbitrary and that they switch and change up so much, why is the feelings a safe place for us to find faith in?
Well, a big part of that, I think, is that we don't believe in we don't believe in an objective reality outside of ourselves. So I think we really do. I mean, I just watched What Is a Woman? Did we talk about this last week? I can't remember.
I don't think so. No.
What day? Because I hadn't seen it before.
I did not know that, actually.
It's really good. There's a group of men from a bunch of different churches that get together and do things here in Spokane, and so I went with a group of guys. I think there were 6 different churches represented at this. It was just a showing. There's about 20 guys there, and took one of my sons and went and watched it, and it's really well done. It was really good. What was so amazing was the number of times that he said, "What is a woman?" and somebody responded, "A woman is anyone who identifies as a woman." And he said, "But what are they identifying as?" And they went blank. Like, what are they identifying as? A woman? But that's what I'm asking. What is a woman? Anyone who identifies as a woman. What are they identifying as? It was like they couldn't. It was like a judicial blindness. they could not understand. And I think it's because they don't believe in objective reality out there. We give meaning to everything from our mind. Our mind actually, so things don't have a nature, things don't have a shape, things have a physical shape, but they don't have a metaphysical shape. We give that to it through our mind. Um, the older view of that was that all of our minds are connected in the giving of it through some sort of I mean, there's disagreements on what it is, but through society or through history or through um, the uh, the universal unconsciousness or universal consciousness. I mean, right? Like all these different things hold humanity together in order so that humanity as a whole gives shape to things. Language does it. Our stories do it. Whatever it is, we actually don't believe in the connections, that the connections now between people are real anymore. Those have all been dissolved, and they're all now seen as power structures, coercive power. And this is why critical theory needs to be opposed so significantly, that it can't be used as a tool, quote unquote, is because it's a view that every relationship is a power structure, and that, which means if somebody has some, then they've taken it from somebody else, right? That you can't, and and if that's the case, then there's no longer any real connection between people. That's why you can only feel your connection, right? I mean, so in the 90s, in the early 2000s, this is why the found family theme became so predominant, right? Is because people stopped believing in the real connection with their real family, that their connection with their family was a real connection. It's only biological. That's not a real thing, right? Anymore. So I think people actually are experiencing the world, for the most part, as billiard balls that might be in the same space and on the same table as some other people, but there's no real connection. They don't experience the world like they're the elbow of the body of Christ, and they're truly connected. They don't experience their own they don't experience their political civic life like they are a part of the body politic, connected to one another. They don't experience they don't experience their own family life like they're connected, because they um the they don't go through the normal connecting rituals anymore. I mean, there's can you think of any connective tissue, ritual connective tissue, anything covenant connective tissue that is still universal in America? I can't. I've tried a number of times. Now even marriage is gone.
What about holidays?
Yeah, I mean, you might get Christmas. I guess 4th of July. No, but even 4th of July, people experience it different, do things different. I mean, when I was growing up, 4th of July was something everybody went downtown for. The whole city, we went downtown as a city and we experienced it together. Coeur d'Alene went downtown as a city. They experienced it together. We don't even do that anymore. A lot of our fireworks shows have been shut down.
Well, we experienced it together in the sky in the neighborhood. Like, that was our experience together. It was all right. Who's gonna fourth it up more, right? And
Yeah,
there was back and forth, and it was song or dance in the community. But it was something that I don't know if you remember during COVID, but I think it was actually California where it's illegal to pop fireworks. Somebody did a drone shot, and the drone went over I think you could see it from a distance, but it was like, oh, like blocks and blocks were just lighting up fireworks together, just and in a place where they said you can't hang out with
Yeah.
each other, and they still denied it. And it was like, oh, there's still a remnant here that's willing to say no. But I think that, outside of, I think you're at Christmas and 4th of July, Memorial Day is kind of falling off now. It used to
Mhm.
be a moment there when I was younger, but and
I I
Christmas
re
is such a battle for it.
I remember whole groups of adults at Riverfront Park in Spokane while the fireworks went off and they played "Proud to Be an American" over the loudspeakers. Whole groups of adults crying together
Mm,
because they were proud to be Americans.
right.
This was like 84, 85, when you were still allowed to be
Yeah.
proud to be an American, right? Now, um, every attempt, I don't think that connective tissue is still alive. I think it's rotting away.
Mm. I'm surprised that I'm surprised. And so this goes back to, so the reason that there's no real covenantal, real connections there. And so the only thing that people find connection through is through emotion.
Through emotions, yeah. And
Okay.
so, um, and um,
What about,
the time they feel connected is through orgasm. I mean, I think that's the other thing, is that the reason that people, when they say you can't deny me this, it's because it's the only time they feel connected to reality. Um, uh, it's
mm,
and I think that's a through God's intention, but there's a right way um to search that out and a wrong way to search that out. Um, and there's a way to search it out that leads to less and less fulfillment, and a way to search it out that leads to more and more fulfillment. Um, so
is that kind of like the reflex of a belly laugh though? Is orgasm is the same way? It's like you can't deny the
yeah,
reality of that. And
right.
it's
I
something
think
that
so.
you're not controlling necessarily. And so
Right.
it's more tangible than anything you've ever had. And so this is like a belly laugh. You can't control it. It just happens, and you're like, okay, that's reality. It's a
Yeah,
touch point.
it is. It's a touch point. And I mean, I think you get something similar with, responses to music, responses to I mean, I think a good, when like when Stranger Things, everybody's watching it, everybody wants to talk about it. You had something, I think, like that with Marvel, where the stories were, you were responding to the stories in a particular way because they were well told, and then it connected you with your neighbors. I mean, when we moved down to the Bay Area the year they drafted Steph Curry, and they went, the Golden State Warriors went from the second worst team in the league to, the best record in history. And that year was the year I finally met all my neighbors, because when a Warriors game would end, everybody would
Interesting.
walk outside to talk to one another that season, because it was it was an experience that the community was having together with its sports team. I had neighbors that I'd never seen before, but every TV was on watching those games, especially when they were getting closer and closer to beating the record. Actually, when they first when they came out the gate and they won however many in a row, and nobody had ever done that before, every one of those games, when they would extend the record further and further, then everybody would walk out of the neighborhood and start talking about it. Oh my gosh, did you see the game? Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Jason. We live right there. You live here. There was a communal experience to that sports team. Um,
They didn't win a
that
championship that year, did they?
they didn't know.
Yeah, all right. Best record ever, but didn't win a championship. I don't think Jordan
No,
did that. I'm pretty sure when he had the best record, they won championships. I'm just saying.
it's true.
Pretty
They
sure.
also didn't have refs kicking players out for no good
Oh,
reason.
blame it on the refs. Blame it on the refs.
Oh, I know. I'm not. I'm stating a straight fact, right? That because you know what else Jordan never did was go to the podium afterwards and try to shame the refs into getting rid of somebody on the other team.
Hey, hey, hey. I'm just saying history won't remember any of those things.
It's true. It's true. History won't remember it. We can agree that Jordan was the greatest individual player ever, and that the Golden State Warriors that year were the greatest team ever. So we can just put those two things.
I can't ever say that
because history won't remember that Jordan didn't get as many wins. But it's okay. He doesn't have to be the greatest shooter of all time to be the greatest player of all time. Greatest shooter of all time is a different thing.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you who won't have the title GOAT. I'm just saying, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh no, so I don't think Steph Curry is the greatest player of all time, but there's no doubt he's the greatest shooter that's ever lived.
I think that's fair.
Yeah,
I think it's fair. That's fair. I'll give him that. But you know,
and
it could.
Yeah, the game is forever changed because of each of them. Both of them touched the game in such a way that it will never be the same.
Yeah, but one desperately needed the other, because had he not had him, he wouldn't have a great coach to teach him. So I'm just saying, like, you know,
that's true.
It's necessary.
I did like the interview when Steve Kerr said which of the teams would win. He said, "Oh, we would definitely beat us."
Steve.
They were like, which is which? And he's like,
exactly.
Yeah, you'll have to
I'll let you figure that out.
Yeah.
So before our friendship ends, I want to touch this, and then I want to get into Cupid and C.S. Lewis, where he starts off with images of Spencer's images of life. But you said that Christians don't have a good answer for "my love is just like yours." What is the answer for that question or that statement?
I think that that centrally the answer is that covenant that covenant love is love between a covenant head and a covenant subject. And we have lost our own understanding.
We don't even want to talk like that.
Right. We don't even want to talk like that. But that's a beautiful kind of love that you actually don't get because each person has to literally sacrifice themselves for the other person in that relationship. So you can say, well, like, look, I give stuff up, but that's different than saying I'm taking on a particular office within a covenant. I have to lose myself to this office in order to live it well. I actually have to die to myself to live out this office well.
Okay, so that brings up, okay, hold that thought. Don't go anywhere with that, but then add this to it though. So then what in the world, because I think when people now, this is kind of, unfortunately, the complementarian movement has helped in a negative way with this, because they've made everybody like this. There isn't a hierarchy to this ultimately, right? It's said like it is, but then a lot of the way times we think of marriage is like there isn't a subject and there isn't
most complementarians I know reject the word hierarchy, and so I have been I don't really can I say this out loud?
You're not asking me, because I don't yes.
I know I don't like complementarianism.
Right, we talked about that a little bit,
but it's not because I think the complementarians are trying to follow the scriptures within a false cosmology, or within the world's cosmology. So I think complementarianism is worldliness.
You got to work that out.
So worldliness is when we receive our orders or our purpose or from the world, right? When we are trying to we let the world tell us what it is we're trying to accomplish. The worldliness that's obvious is like, oh, I'm a drunk because I think that at the bottom of the bottle I'm going to find satisfaction, right? I go out and I party and I sleep around, right? That's a form of worldliness that says that in pleasure is ultimate fulfillment. But there's another form of worldliness that's a little bit that's harder to um to identify, and that's when we take our orders from the world, but then we use Jesus to try and fulfill the world's purposes for us. Right. So the world's purposes um for marriage are that marriage gives us the satisfaction, the pleasure that gives us ultimate satisfaction. Right. God's purposes for marriage are not is not primarily our pleasure. Right. The primary purpose for marriage is to accomplish the mission that God gave us in the garden, and to image God into creation. Right. So to be the sub regent or vice regent, I think is a I've heard it put that way. I think that's a helpful way to think about it, right? So mankind images God to creation, and in order to fulfill the mission that God gave us at the beginning, which is be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, right? Take dominion. That's what marriage is for. And it so happens that when we use marriage the way God told us to, it also is the most fulfilling, one of the most fulfilling things that you'll find. Right. So it's not that the fulfillment is not the point.
It's a
the
secondary result of.
Yeah, fulfillment is the result of using something for its proper end. Right. I mean, it's if you think of it like I would think of it along the lines of something like when you're cooking bacon smells really good. If you got it in your head that the smell of cooking bacon was the point of bacon, right? Then you would be cooking bacon all day long and then tossing out the bacon, right? The bacon is not primarily for the smell. The smell is a result of using bacon for what it should be used for, which is you cook it and you put it in a BLT, or you put it on a burger, right? You eat it with pancakes. There's lots of good ways to fulfill the ultimate purpose of bacon, but smell is a byproduct, right, of the proper use of bacon. The joy in marriage is a byproduct of the proper use of marriage. And even saying something like that sounds heretical, because it is heretical in modernism, right? Because personal pleasure is the ultimate measure of if we're using something properly. But that's the world's that's the world giving us what something is for, and then us trying to use Jesus to say, well, we can do that. Jesus can help us accomplish the world's goals for us. And I think complementarianism in its present state has fallen into that, right? The modest is hottest type of complementarianism that you run into. But the problem is most of the folks that are trying to be complementarians are actually trying to be faithful. And so that's why it's hard to say, I think complementarianism is a mistake. Because I actually think that a covenantal hierarchical view of marriage, or the covenantal hierarchical reality of marriage, right? It's not a view that we bring to marriage and impose. It's the reality, right? That embracing the reality of a covenantal hierarchical, that marriage is covenantal and hierarchical, does actually lead to the most joy, but it's not what it actually primarily leads to is effectiveness on the mission that God has given us, right? And the mission is have children and raise them to love the Lord, take dominion
You forgot
over.
baptize them in between there.
That's Can we just assume it? Yeah.
No.
No. Okay,
No.
can't anymore.
You
right?
just got done talking about complementarianism. Don't assume anything.
Yeah. but I think it actually makes absolute perfect sense within a covenantal understanding, right?
Mhm.
That our relationship to our children is not simply biological. It is also covenantal, right? That they are born, they are born, and that gives us, through the covenantal relationship, through the covenant love, they're born, and then their relationship to us is covenantal and hierarchical, and God has already claimed them because we're in covenant with him as a family. That means anything that, it's just like if you work for Disney, anything you create on their computers is theirs. Right? They own anything created through this hardware, is God's, because God's in covenant with us.
That was good, Jason. That was real good. That was really, very, very poetic.
It's a corporate analogy.
Yeah, that's poetic.
So the baptism, it's nonsensical to not baptize your children in that, if we are covenantally, corporately, hierarchically in relationship with God,
right,
as a family. But this is where some of that difference comes in, because a lot of Baptists would say a family can't be Christian. A husband can be Christian and a wife can be Christian, but the family unit is not itself a Christian thing. Entity, right? Because only individuals can be Christians, but that is already buying into the anti-covenantal nature that modernism brings.
I think some of it's even worse than that. I think the ones that are saying that are then still coming in and saying, but the people that are in part of the family can't be covenantal, right? Like, that's the other side of it, because you have some now, which is really interesting, that are starting to, because I really think the social justice movement has made people think far deeper about their theology, covenantal theology, and how it applies all the way out to the civil magistrate. And so, but you got a lot of people now who are starting to hold to that the family is a covenant, like
like I have Baptist friends that we don't actually disagree on this. We disagree about the application and the timing,
right?
But we don't disagree that our kids are claimed by God. And at that point, I'm like, I just give it a generation, and your kids will be baptizing your grandkids, and we'll be good. I'm not, and they're saying the same thing about me, right? They give it a generation, and the timing will switch for you. And but we're both raising our kids by faith. It doesn't, but we're both raising our kids by faith, because I think that's at the heart of it. Covenants are kept by faith. If we don't have a covenant relationship with our kids, if our family's not a covenant relationship, then it's going to be by works. Because covenants are kept by faith. If God has promises for our kids, then we can raise our kids by faith. If we don't have promises for our kids, then it comes down to works, or it comes down to something arbitrary. That's not biblical.
So then back to the original question, which is, so what is the answer for my love is just like yours? Well, covenantal love requires a hierarchical structure.
Yeah, our love is, you have to lose yourself to love well. You have to die to yourself to love well. You and literally, in order to take on, the office of husband, you have to die to yourself. To take on the office of wife, you have to die to yourself and say the mission that God has. So a wife says, I am going to give up the I am going to take on my husband's wife. I'm going to take on my husband's mission as my own. I'm going to submit. Submission means coming under the mission of another. I'm going to take on my husband's mission as my own. And that's all a gift that she gives to a man, to her husband. And it remains a gift throughout her entire life, right? Anything she does to help on the mission is a gift that she is giving to her husband.
You keep saying this word she. We don't do she. There's not a she here. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, because honestly, that's what there's. If now you're talking, and we'll talk about. I'm surprised you actually. I'm not surprised that you liked What Is a Woman, but I thought you would have. In my head, there's a critique of What Is a Woman that I thought you would have that fits into the modernistic ideology. And so I don't want to talk about it yet. I'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
But if you're talking to somebody that says our love is just like your love because love is love, they're not going to buy into any of the categories you're setting up in a hierarchy. He, him, her, hers, she. That's not how their love works. It works because of people who share these emotions.
Right. And but the we have overcome a Machiavellian worldview before, because the Roman Empire had a similar sort of understanding, and the Greeks did as well, right? There was tons of pedophilia, Plato, Buggard, I don't know how to say it, his students, and it was part of their training. The homosexual love between an adult male and a male child was considered more philosophical because there was no possibility of it creating more matter. So it was like, that's how Gnostic the understanding philosophically was, and it was Machiavellian in that the people with the power shaped reality, right? The church overcame that by living out beautiful, loving marriages and having children and raising them, right? Because you started to see that the love of death was uglier than the love of life. The love of death that you had in the Roman Empire was uglier than the love of life, which was much more beautiful, that you had within the church. So much so that you have people that they hear, oh my gosh, over there they intermarry with their brothers and sisters because they called one another brother and sister, and then they would get married. They intermarry within brothers and sisters, and they are cannibals because they eat flesh and drink wine, because of the way that they talked about the Lord's Supper. And so people would visit in order to see this crazy cult, and then they would see how much they loved one another, how much the children were taken care, how well the children were taken care of, how the way that the marriages were faithful, and they would be converted. And I've seen this happen in our lifetime. And we had a woman visit our church who said none of it made any sense to her, but she saw how much the children loved their parents, and she said, I've got to come back and figure out how that happens, right? That the children are sitting in church, and the parents and the children are talking to each other, and they love one another, and how gentle and kind the fathers were with their kids. And she said, I've got to come back and see that again. That I've never seen that anywhere. And she ended up converted and baptized, but it was the beauty of the families that struck her this, and that's been the way that the church has overcome this sort of Machiavellian understanding of advancement, you know, Machiavellian understanding of quote unquote love.
So on the one-on-one debate, you just lose that one and plan on just culturally living it out in such a way that it's visible so that people can see it. But
that's how you win culturally. In the one-on-one debate, I mean, you can win that debate just by having people for dinner, right? But you also, I think you win the debate by saying, by knowing here's what reality is and describing it to people, right? Because you don't, and there will be people that just can't make heads or tails, because as soon as you say, like I used to try and come up with other words besides head and subject, but then I was like, what is that? That's what the Bible uses, right? The wife is subject to her husband, right? That's a covenant. That's a covenant term. So we do need to have our covenant theology to understand that, because it's not a strength, because it's not a strength and weakness term. We tend to think in terms of
right.
strength and weakness. Subjection and coercion is how we think of everything. And so, but covenant is voluntary submission. That's voluntary mutual submission in the terms of marriage, because a husband, because the wife is the head of her husband's body, right? She has covenant authority over how he uses his body. He doesn't get to go off and sleep with anybody he wants. His body is hers. He he doesn't get to, deny her her sexual advances, because his body is hers, right? You've got except for an agreed upon time, Corinthians, it's not a coercive relationship. The head subject relationship is not a coercive relationship, right? It's a voluntary relationship that's entered into it, and it involves vows, public vows that the community gets to hold you to. There isn't the permission to use coercive force. It's not granted in that relationship. It's granted in a parent-child relationship. It's granted in a civil relationship, but it's not granted in a marriage relationship. So there's all sorts of limitations put on it. But it is a relationship that has a particular end in mind, which is taking dominion, gardening your plot, and having children that are raised up to go take another plot and take dominion of the next plot, right? So it has a telos, and then it has limitations. So, but being familiar with all that, and then loving it, and then just telling people about it is our argument, right? Because it's good news. Hey, guess what? The purpose of your marriage is not people that go into marriage thinking that marriage is going to fulfill them will empty their marriage of meaning. They will leave a shell. Of their marriage will end up a shell, because they're trying to suck out of it what isn't in there.
Right.
And so they'll empty it. Right.
They'll mine it absolutely for something else, and they miss all the things that,
Yeah. And you see, I call it grandma got a new tattoo syndrome, right? Where you see some woman in her 50s, late 40s, her kids are moving out, and her marriage, her husband has been sucking her dry of meaning throughout her life, and so she feels invisible, like a shell of herself, and her kid, but she's been loving her kids, and so then her kids start moving away, and she has to do something to remind everybody that she exists. she has to do something to convince herself that she's not a ghost. She has to do so, and so she starts doing something crazy, or she gets plastic surgery or a tattoo, and you think, where'd that come from? What's going on? Well, it's years of trying to get something out of marriage that it's not designed to give, and so then it's empty, and so you've got to do something to prove that you still exist, that you're still there, that you're not a ghost.
So, how does Edmund Spencer apply in all of this, and Lewis's introduction to with Cupid? Because you talked about that earlier, the false Cupid.
You've got the false Cupid and the real Cupid. So the false Cupid is the one is so basically there's the Cupid is the son of Venus, and he's a god or a demigod. I mean he's a small g god in Ovid and in in the Odyssey. Where else does he show up? He shows up in Hesiod, and he is got arrows that and so he has a blindfold, but he's got arrows and he shoots people, and when you get struck by one of his arrows, then you fall in love, right? But the question of whether he's a good guy or a bad guy is always on the table, and everybody always is arguing. So because love is such, the falling in love is such a strange and mysterious thing, that people have been wrestling with it philosophically and mythologically all throughout. I mean, in fact, it's one of the things that Solomon even says, there are certain things that I have not been able to make sense of, and one of them is the way of a young man with a young maid, right? Like who falls in love with whom is so strange and mysterious, that it's and unpredictable, that even Solomon says, I don't know. That's a mystery beyond me. Well, the character of Cupid then becomes sometimes he's a good guy and sometimes he's a bad guy in ancient literature. What you have in Spencer is you've got the real Cupid and then the idol Cupid. When you turn love into an idol, he's got a whole allegorical story about what happens when you turn love into an idol. And because really then love turns into the fulfillment of your physical or fleshly desires.
Stop it. Wait. You mean to tell me that we just happened to... Okay, I'm looking at the show right now. We didn't plan on... I was just bringing up the old conversation we were having about everything, everywhere, all at once.
Yeah.
And like that just walks right into this.
Right into this, exactly. Right. So, and that's what I'm saying is Edmund Spencer, he actually, I think he comes along and answers exactly our issues, but it's like stepping into an alien world.
Whoa. Okay. I'm putting it all together in my head right now. Go ahead, keep going.
So what happens when we turn it into an idol, is we mistake the fleshly desires. The fleshly desires, they if you think of it like you're walking down the woods and you've got these optional paths, fleshly desires begin as a when fleshly desires are removed from covenant requirements, covenant vows, those paths lead to quicksand, lead to death, lead to monsters, lead to spiders, that sort of thing, giant spiders. Whereas when our fleshly desires are joined to covenant vows, and they lead to palaces, great feasts, those sorts of things, right? So
wonderful societies,
beautiful things. that you really get. I just dropped my book. Just fell off my book fell off my desk. So, but there's a let me see if I can.
Are you looking for
Fun.
the stanza, or are you looking for like chapter 1 and?
Well, I was trying to think of.
Okay, you know what? Now I'm starting to understand why you're saying Spencer is important, but we have to get into the world of Spencer
Yeah.
because it's such a foreign. So the space trilogy is Lewis trying to get people to understand what Spencer is doing.
Yes. So the first space trilogy is about how the first of so because the second space trilogy is all about Venus and the false Cupid, and so the second space trilogy is about this exact problem. The first space trilogy is about how to step into an alien world that is really just a history earlier than your own, right? How do you step into a um you remember we talked about a world ends when its metaphor has died.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the world of Spencer is gone because all of the metaphors are dead. What does it look like, though, to step into that world? Well, that's what Out of the Silent Planet is about, is stepping into an alien culture that turns out to be your culture in a previous age.
Mm.
um,
With a
there's
different metaphor.
with a different, yeah, so it's got all different metaphors, all different desires, all, so there's this entire conversation between Ransom and the Harasa, one of the Harasa, about how they get married and then they have sex one time and have children, and then they write poems about it the rest of their lives, right? Instead of repeating the act over and over,
Oh
they
wow.
they work to strengthen their memory over and over so that their memory of it becomes more pleasurable
Than
than
actually doing it.
the actual, yeah. So um which is a poet's mindset, right? So he's trying to see, what is a poet people, right? The Anglo-Saxons were poet people and we are not. What is that? Um, what is it that, why is it that a poem is considered such a pleasurable thing to them, right? Because they have memories that we don't have. We don't strengthen our memories. I mean, I'm constantly like, oh man, what is the name of this or the name of that? Or I can't remember, all sorts of things.
Oh,
There
I
are
see.
certain people, right? So we don't exercise our memory, which means we don't have, there isn't an internal strength. There isn't an internal pleasure that we can retreat to because we don't have that memories like they did.
No,
This
it's in
is,
our cell phone.
yeah, exactly. Right there.
It's external.
What one of the reasons that, I mean, there's lots of reasons that I think that uh the Andy Dufresne is a great character, right? From the Shawshank Redemption. But one of the best moments, is when he locks himself in and puts the opera on, and it stops everything in the whole prison. They stop it, and everyone stops and listens to the opera, and it's the beauty of it, that moment. And then he gets put in to solitary confinement, and when he comes out, they say, man, that must have been awful. And he says, no, I was able to bring Mozart with me because he had it, because it was in his memory. What would we bring with us if we were put into solitary confinement, right? We
Wow.
don't, right? We don't purposefully exercise our memories. Well, if we were to then meet a people who did, uh, they would feel alien to us, right? They exercise their memory, they purposefully fill it with good things, beautiful things, true things. And then, so you've got something like, Boethius, uh, he's got the consolation of philosophy. He was put in solitary confinement, and he used the time to develop the an entire tractate on how the history of philosophy can console you in the midst of suffering, right? Because he had it all memorized, right? He had worked it into his memory.
Wow.
We don't really do that anymore. We don't exercise our memory. So you have the first people you meet are the Harasa, who have this whole different poetic understanding of what they value, and at the center of it is they value their personal memories and they value the corporate memory of people. And then a monster shows up and they all get really excited because they all spend their lives hoping to kill a dragon. Right? It's amazing. And so then they all get to go out on this dragon hunt together, and he is completely thrown off. Like, this isn't the way we think anymore, that you hear that there's a dragon coming and everybody gets excited. No, they don't get afraid, they get excited. They've been training their whole lives to kill a dragon, right? And it's this amazing moment within the book where you get to feel with them what it would be like to spend your life hoping to kill a dragon and then and then a dragon shows up in town, right? Everybody, but that's something that fiction, fiction trains our imagination, and fiction trains our affections toward what good fiction towards wanting what's good and what's right. Well, the second book, then he goes to Venus, and you have Satan, a Satan character, the Unman, shows up as the false Cupid. Right? The false Cupid shows up trying to tempt away, and we know that for a number of reasons, but one of them is the dragon that's supposed to guard that is supposed to guard the woman. At the base of there's a dragon at the base of all these trees that are supposed to guard the chastity of women, and because the false Cupid has shown up in the form of the form that he's shown up in, he's able to navigate his way past all of the dragons that are supposed to protect the chastity of the Eve of Venus. And then he uses all of the arguments that the false Cupid uses to convince us to ignore the hierarchical nature of reality and do our own thing, right? To follow ourselves rather than lean into the office that God has given us, right? And it's an amazing book. But and Until We Have Faces is literally about Cupid and Psyche. This is a theme throughout his whole life. So in the allegory of love, there's a whole section on Cupid, all the way to the last thing that he wrote, this book, there's a whole section on Cupid. This is at the center of Lewis's thought, is how can romantic love lead us away from God or towards God, depending on whether we idolize it or it submits to reality, right? Is it going to submit to Christ, submit to reality, submit to the way God made the world? Or are we going to try and use it to escape the way God made the world, or reformat the world according to our own desires? And it all comes down to really who we believe to be in charge. Did God create a world that we submit to, or do we create the world after our own desires? And that's what I mean. It's such a fundamentally different understanding that when our neighbor comes to us and they say, well, love is love, right? And you say, is it submitting to reality or not? Right. Love, the love between a man and a woman is not, or the love between two people, if it is not, if we are not fulfilled in God, we will destroy a person we try to find fulfillment in. We will be that vampire that removes life from them because we're trying to get life, right? We're trying to,
You know what's interesting
if
about
we show up fulfilled, then we will have plenty of overflowing life to pour into a person, and we will find the relationships fulfilling
you know
if
what's
we're already fulfilled in God.
you know what's really interesting about that is that's exactly the answer to everything everywhere all at once, is because they weren't fulfilled in God. So she destroyed everything.
Everything she touched.
It was tragic. And and even though that they tried to resolve it, there was like there's no resolving it. There was no real resolve because nothing was actually um that thirst wasn't satisfied. They just wanted to act like it was. But that's exactly what happened. So they got that part right.
Right, and but that's the thing is, the modern world, it simultaneously doesn't believe that you can find fulfillment, and then it promises fulfillment everywhere. Then it went and saw the new Wes Anderson movie yesterday with Cedric, with my oldest son, and we had a ton of fun afterwards talking about it, and but it's Wes Anderson. It's like he's got one eye wide open, because it's all about, if space is space, how can we pretend that we're going to find individual fulfillment here if we're just a tiny rock floating through mostly nothingness?
Mm.
Like, how can we, who do we think we are that we're going to somehow individually wrestle ultimate meaning out of this sort of universe? It's it's really really poignant. um Whether or not, I mean, if you get a chance to watch it, he tries to give an answer. It's really fascinating watching him try to give an answer. um I mean, because it's like the opposite of what we've been talking about, right? Because he's drawing from the modernist cosmology the reality that if that's true, none of this means anything.
Mm.
And so our experience of meaninglessness is actually true if this is the case. And so then he tries to give an answer. I don't want to spoil it because I want you to watch it so we can talk
I'll,
about it. But
I'll go check it. It's starting to, this whole talk now getting into Edmund Spencer and then C.S. Lewis being the gateway drug. It makes me feel like Lewis is probably one of the most influential characters of the last 100 years. That
the most, hands
yeah,
down, I think
wow,
most, yeah, he's going to be my, I so I think that he will be something along the lines of what Calvin is for the last 500 years.
mm.
I think Lewis is going to be somewhere along those lines for the next 500 years.
So okay, I haven't finished this chapter yet, chapter 1. So I'm going to go through here, but so wow, that really just hit right. Everything that we just got done talking about with everything everywhere all at once in the Spider Verse. That was amazing. I had no idea. You know what's crazy is I hadn't read this chapter yet, so I didn't know that was going to go that way.
I just assumed you were setting us up really well, because
I
I
ain't
was
that
like,
good.
that's a perfect setup. Way to go.
I ain't that good. I ain't that good. I mean, I'm pretty cool, but I ain't that good. That was on God for real.
I love
um,
I love how he's talking about the relationship between Venus and Mars. So Mars, the god of war, and Venus, the goddess of love, and how um, through Christ's influence, war is becoming less and less and less, and um, and true love is becoming more and more and more. Right. So um, men who have throughout had to been warriors and soldiers, that through in the Middle Ages they hit a point where they could be both warriors and soldiers and lovers, and how now, because war is actually being overcome by the gospel in Christendom, that men can actually focus on being husbands in a way that they haven't been able to throughout history. Um,
Mm.
that because of Christ, the Prince of Peace, his rule in the world is actually um, transforming warriors into husbands. I think
Mm.
that's such a that's such a neat way of thinking, right? That now we have tried to dethrone Christ, and so we got more war in the 20th century than we had in any well, really the entire rest of history combined. There were more deaths and war in the 20th century than any other time period. Um, that's what you get by saying, "Hey, leave us alone," to the Prince of Peace.
Well, and too, there was a particular large ground that was covered by the gospel that was coming to head. It's like, well, we don't want to hear. We know he's the king, but we don't want to submit to that, right?
Right.
And it's like, well, get ready for fighting. Then we about to, you about to be overrun. Your knees are about to be broken,
Yeah.
so that you can bend the knee to Christ. And so some of that is like, 1 Corinthians 15, where his enemies are being made his footstool. Like
Yeah.
that's, you know, some of that is happening too. All right, I'm gonna go through this. I'm gonna go through this, and I'm hoping like we can move on to the next chapter, and I'll be ready for the next chapter. But I'm gonna go through this, and um, all the context of what Lewis is doing is really helpful. And because now a space trilogy feels different to me. At first everybody, particularly Toby, wanted me to read, look, you just need to read the last book, right? That's the one you need to read, right? And unfortunately, I've taken reading the same way that when I became reformed, the only thing that was important to read was theological works. That's it.
Right.
That's it. You just need to read the theology. That's all that matters. Nothing else is important. And I get that, but what I think was the issue is that we've neglected to see theology in all of God's work, right? It's like
Right.
there's theology here, and I'm not talking about Bible. There's a neglect to see when you neglect to see God's hand through history, then you will think history is it's an evolutionistic idea of history. Things are just happening, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so you just need to grab as much theology as you can and run. Right. But when you start to see God's hand move through history, you realize that there's all kinds of breadcrumbs, like what Lewis is doing in book 1, where they've been waiting to fight dragons because they know they're dragons, and they're like, oh well, now I gotta
Yeah.
go read that. But
Right.
book
But I think it's because the Reformed folks at present, one of the errors that we make is that we don't take we think in terms of the suppression of desire as godliness, rather
mm,
than the ordering of desire, the proper ordering of
mm,
desire. Right. So what
that's good.
God does is he reorders our loves, and ignites loves that we didn't know we should have. He but we always think in terms of the suppression of desire rather than reordering it. So it's rare that people in the modern era desire too strongly.
Mm,
Usually what it is things that are weak desires are the strongest desires we have. Whereas when the things that we love more are overrun, or when our lower desires are overrun by desire for higher things, then they suddenly find themselves put into proper order, and you don't, like everyone up until the very most modern era, post 1950, lust was considered one of the lowest runged problems, right? I mean, it's like it's level 2 in the in Dante, right? It's not anywhere right. And for us, it has become the biggest, most terrifying of monsters. And for them, lust was like a lizard, right? You're not even up to the dragons yet. Lust is one of the small ones. um, because it's so easily turned, because the energy is so easily turned for good, right? Because you get married, and you can turn that energy for good. It can become fruitful so easily. um the the I And it's such a weak desire as other desires go. The problem is we don't have other desires, and so it feels really, really strong. Right?
Mm.
um the so and but that has not been the universal experience of mankind. That's a distinctly modern experience that really begins popping into existence in the 50s a little bit, and then big time in the 70s, and then now we think of that as like, that's the biggest dragon on the block. um,
Out of all the projects that I worked on, the one we did at Wretched on slaying the dragon, pornography, the issue of pornography, was the most download and listen to piece of we ever created. I mean, it was insane. It was downloaded so much.
and
Yeah, go ahead.
because it's a real problem, right? It is a real
Yeah.
problem, but what we try to do is we say we need to suppress that desire, rather than saying, what's the proper use of that desire, and what does it look like to just desire other things that are better.
How does that
Strong in a
work? How does that work? How do you, because with people who are struggling with this, that is um the disciplines, like we talked about this on the show, that this goes from another desire which turns into violence because you can't feed that one enough. And so you know so how do you get a desire that's stronger than the sexual desire to be with a woman?
Well, for the um you have to find you have to actually hunt out the beautiful experiences of life that are bigger and better and greater, right? So and this is where we tend to just want so little, right? And so a lot
Mm.
of men, in order to fight lust and pornography, they end up turning in on themselves and trying to pound it down over and over and over,
Uh-huh.
rather than working on growing as a man, becoming, to take that desire and say, well, what does it look like to win a woman? Well, I should go get a job. I should go buy a house. I should go out and have some adventures and travel, and grow my soul, right, to the point where the desires for all these other things outpace my
Mm.
desire for pornography, my those lustful desires. And then you become the kind of man too that a real woman wants. Right?
Right.
Right. you know um i
And
was I was
there's something in that too that's really important, is that the desire for pornography isn't the same desire for a woman.
yeah.
Right? Like that's really important. It's like there's a desire because the desire for a woman actually makes you do things to go get one.
Right. Right.
Right.
Because the pornography is a turning in on yourself. um
Right.
and I mean, and there's a reason that people that turn in on themselves a lot end up homosexual,
Mm.
right? That homosexual, you because you think, like, why is it that so many people, young men get famous, and they start out by being like any woman, any woman all the time, and then they end up saying, well, actually, I'm gay now.
Right.
Like,
Or I like
you
both sides. I just do whatever I
yeah,
like.
you
Yeah.
start by, and then but how is it that you develop homosexuality? Well, it's because you've been turning in on yourself all this time. You're not giving
Yep.
yourself away. People are tools in your that you are using for your own purposes, because you've turned in on yourself, and you have the power, either through fame or money or whatever, to use people as tools. And then pretty soon you have um the proper use of a woman even doesn't do it for you, right? So you've got to
Because she's not
constantly
enough
be
like me.
right. Exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that instead of saying I need to suppress, we need to think in terms of growing the right desires, right? Growing the desires that are much more fulfilling, um, and because then it changes you into a person that's more attractive to women. Um, I was just writing a comedy recently, and you just got me started on The Walking Dead.
Yes.
So addictive, man.
Isn't that a great? I mean, especially what episode are you on?
I just started season 2.
Oh, okay. Season 1 was phenomenal, wasn't it?
It was amazing, yeah. But then here's the problem: somebody stepped in a pine cone behind me recently, and I was like, "It's a zombie." The world is so immersive. But I was writing, I was writing a little post-apocalyptic comedy sketch, because now I'm all inspired by this whole thing, and about this guy, about a young guy who's like, he's trying to be like, he wants to like write poetry for women, and he wants to and so he meets a girl. He's walking through the woods, and he's got his shotgun or his rifle, and he meets a girl who with her little sister, and he says, oh, and he's trying to like use pickup lines and to get her to go on a date with him, but the apocalypse has happened, and she's like, I'm not interested, I don't need any of that. And then he's like, well, I also have a farm, and I'm a crack shot, and I've been storing up ammo. And she's like, ammo?
Ammo?
You've been
Did you
storing
say
up ammo?
you're a crack shot?
Crack shot. And she's like, oh, maybe I should come check out your compound. And I guess and so what she finds attractive in him is his compound. And all of a sudden, he's handsomer than he was a moment ago when he was trying to be romantic. So I thought it was just it's really just like one long joke with a punchline. Compound. You've got a compound, you say. But the idea being that I think we actually live really in something more like a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
But most Christian men are still thinking in terms of complementarianism, and so they're not particularly attractive to women.
Oh,
because women want a compound. Now, they don't want a physical, maybe somebody does want a physical compound, but they want a man that is a compound, a man that understands the covenantal nature of things, that's living according to it, that's embracing reality, that is himself, in his confidence in the way God made the world, is a compound, and who has said, and I'm working on ordering my desires. I'm working on getting started on the mission of taking dominion of this place. I'm expanding my soul, my understanding through poetry and literature and travel, and coming to understand the history of Western civilization, and all of these things, right? That is what it means for you to become a compound.
Do you think though that I don't disagree with you. I think that that's still attractive to women, but do you think that the women have been so corrupted by the era itself that what they even want in a man is perverse? because I don't think we've ever seen a moment in time where pornography from women has been so high, right? And so whatever's happening to them, I think that, yeah, I think there is a certain Christian woman within a certain context that is thinking like that, and I think that the guys in that context are missing it. But I think that the women are so messed up too that their natural desire to want a man like that is gone. And that's what we're seeing a lot in some of the red pill shows that are showing women and what they really want in a guy. And it's kind of compound-ish, but not really. you know, because so their natural
That
desires to want a man is so screwed up.
that there I think that is happening in the world. I think there's a lot of Christian women that can't find a Christian guy that's attractive though. That aren't. Now, I do
No,
think
I think
though
you're right about
what
that.
ends up happening, I think what ends up happening is a lot of these young women, they end up dating around with pagan guys, sleeping around, and
Mm,
because they are trying to find something, right? So um and the world is really messed up. I think the church needs to be ready to explain how to be forgiven of your sexual sins a lot better than it
mm.
is right now, right? We tend to shame sexual sins, and so they stay hidden. um and then but and then we harden around them, right? We get a hardened shell around them where they're hidden, because and then that leads to other deeper problems. um you know
It's because it gets infected,
it gets infected,
and
yeah.
no
And
forgiveness gets happening there. Yeah.
right, and we need to figure out how to really get good at I think pastors need to get really good at, not in a Roman Catholic way, but need to get better at hearing confessions. And because right now most pastors aren't people don't think of a pastor as a safe place to go confess your sins.
Hmm.
um when we had, throughout my time as a pastor, there were a number of folks that they started coming in just like once a month and being like, I'm just going to tell you my sins for this that I did this month. Then I would say, okay, Jesus will die for your sins. And one guy was like, you can just confess these directly to God. He's like, I know. They go away faster if I come and tell you. It's like,
Right. I see what he's
then
saying
let's
here.
keep doing it, right? Let's keep
Right.
doing it. But not because they can't confess directly to God and receive that forgiveness, but there's something about the way the modern world works that we hide the sins that are really causing problems psychologically, um, in the traditional sense of the word, soul problems. Psyche means butterfly, but it also means soul. And Psyche is the one who married Cupid. So let's
Oh,
see.
that's, oh my goodness.
So
Too much.
there's a whole
Too
thing.
much.
But psychologically, uh, we the sins that we hide, that we're ashamed of, um, rot our souls,
Mm,
um, thin our souls.
yeah.
They divide it up. It's the back room of the house that you lock the door and say, hey, nobody go in there. And you're like, but it's this funny smell coming from back there, what's
Why is
going
there
on? And
blood coming from underneath the
yeah,
door?
right. And then
Yeah.
and that rots the rest of the house, and you can't and the practice of confessing your sins to someone and hearing the grace of God, um I think is mostly gone from the church. You're not getting that at we hire a counselor for that sort of thing, a professional friend, because we don't have a culture of that within the church. um you know like I, um yeah, it's something that, and the next generation, honestly, they need to hear those stories. We can't do it if we're completely bound by shame. The chains
Hmm.
of shame are that bind us, keep us from being of use to the next generation, which I think is really important.
Well, this goes back to what you said earlier, which is we don't know how to deal with our sin very well, and I don't think it's just the sexual sins, Jason. I think it's all of them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's, when I look around, it's those are the ones that particularly get people locked in the, like, hey, okay, we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
But man, sin, period. Like all of it,
Yeah.
because of that one thing, there's, like you say, it's rotting out so that confession itself of any sin doesn't really happen. It's so uncommon. People don't even know how to do it. I was with my, and this has really been good for me as a father, but when I sin against my kids, I repent and I tell them, and I'm sorry, would you forgive me? And we work through it and so on and so forth. And my kids do it with each other as well. And so when it happens and people see it, they're like, it's a culture shock that someone confessed something that was wrong. And then come to the person expecting that telling them what they sinned against them would bring reconciliation. Right? They're like, whoa, what is it? And then he forgave them, and then they kept playing and things went right. It was like, well, that's what we believe, right? That's
right.
And so now when my children sin against me or their mother, and we teach them, okay, you go to us and now you go to the Lord, right? And then you repent to him too. And now there's this culture there that's happening of repentance. And I want, now even with my kids that are getting older, I want them to know that hasn't changed. But if we're not doing it in our own homes and dealing with the sins that are there in that manner, then of course it's going to be that same way everywhere else, because there's no real forgiveness. Where do you go? Where do you go to get forgiveness? Well, you don't. There's no place. So you better hide it and bury it. And now this thing festers and it starts building up, and then he brings forth death after a while, right? Because you're not repenting of it. And so, yeah, that I think that it's not just that one thing, it's all of it. And I think COVID helped bring that out. There's shame is a great way to get people to be in control. And whenever you're controlled by shame, you're not free. You're just not free. You can't operate. And so we're a culture full of shame.
That's what we discovered in COVID, is we were really easy to manipulate.
Yep.
And it was and all it took was a little bit of shame, and we were like, oh,
yep.
So which means that, we don't understand that Jesus took our shame. Jesus died naked on the cross because he was wearing our shame.
Ugh. Come on now.
And he didn't come out of the tomb naked.
That's
because
right.
the shame was gone, right?
Right. Oh, that's good stuff. All right, so next week we're into C.S. Lewis with Alistair Fowler, Spencer's Images of Life, Chapter 2. I'm gonna go through this one, but it goes to 11. It looks like it just jumps right to 11. Am I right about that?
Oh no, that's Roman numerals. I
knew that.
So yeah, antitypes to the false Cupid, which is a really funny way of.
But it tells you how tired I am.
Antitypes to the false Cupid. So,
which
is the double negative.
That's weird. I'm gonna go through and finish reading this, bro. This is really good. So, are we gonna get to reading any Spencer, or we're just gonna go through this slowly and then?
Well, I would think that probably once we get through the first 3 chapters, then we jump into, because it gives you like, here's kind of a how to read Spencer. Okay. And then I think we read the first 3 chapters. Then let's jump in and read book one from
Spencer.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds exciting.